doing now is spray foaming the entire interior, kind of to give a second air barrier, like a belt and suspenders. However, this is our primary air barrier right here. We do not have anything on the other side of this, so we want to be extra careful here and make sure that we have a nice tight air seal all around the entire house. So you'll notice I spray foamed here. However, there's no spray foam here. And the reason being is because the sheet breaks here. There's no sheet break here. So we only need to foam on our sheet breaks. Even this one down here I didn't need to do. I just kind of got a little crazy because there's no sheet break here. It's only on the top. Everything needs to get spray foamed. Any penetration we've had before we put our insulation in, we're going to go back through, we're going to check everywhere and make sure that everything's got spray foam on it. We can get a nice tight air seal to the house. Caulk works a lot better than spray foam for these. I like to just kind of set it in there. Make sure you have a nice cap. So another thing we want to do before we insulate is to put in blocking for our cabinets. Now sometimes you'll be able to just screw the cabinets into the studs ideally, but you know, if you have a cabinet like this cabinet goes from here to here, and so I'd only be able to screw it into one stud, so I'm going to get a little more blocking here and just make sure I can screw it a little bit better. So right here is going to be where we need power and internet, and we're going to have our Wi-Fi router here. So another last thing you want to do before we close up the walls with insulation is run your internet, your speaker wire, anything like that. So you can see here how once you blow it in nice and tight, even if you remove the fabric, it still stays in there. So you can see it's filling every single nook and cranny. You just can't do that with like fiberglass bats or something like that. You can see we've also finished off the air sealing here. We got a really nice tight, there's, you know, still have to do this part here, but just wanted to make sure at least this is done before we put the drywall up. It's got to be air sealed. Pretty squared. So the thing about this Intello vapor barrier is it's supposed to allow water vapor to come into the house but not to go out. You want a path for the water vapor to go so it'll dry. The house is moist, but it's also warm, and so you want it to come to the inside where the warm air will help it evaporate. These are called drywall clips. Only green builders use them. Nobody else really uses them. What a normal builder will do is they'll put another piece of wood inside this stud bay, and it'll nail to here and it'll stick out, and that way you can attach your drywall to it. But it's going to be a whole 2x4, floor to ceiling, and that's just going to take up space from your insulation. So green builders use drywall clips, and that way you can attach your drywall to the clip and save all the rest of that bay for insulation. This is a great tool for drywall. You can see it kind of sits one side of the square, has a little lip, and it sits on the drywall like that. So you get a nice straight line. you always need to end on a stud. So we're gonna come to this stud right here. You want to be careful, stuff like this. Just kind of some fluff in the middle. We're just gonna kind of flatten it down. Sorry, it's gonna get dusty. Tiny house means a tiny workspace. So I want to use the screws little by little. Don't put them all the way in. Sometimes the insulation will kind of run on top of the studs, so I'll cut it back and kind of tuck it in the sides there. You don't want a buildup of insulation here because it'll press the drywall out. You won't be able to screw the drywall all the way. So you can see here, this one is okay. Like you can see there's a little bit of insulation that's on the stud, but it's not enough where really a big deal. A drywall rasp can really help you just take off a little bit, or if you have a dirty edge you want to clean up. This piece was just a little bit longer than I needed it to be, so the drywall rasp really helps to clean it up. We have a different kind of drywall clip that's really useful for ceilings. Now this one, we actually attach it to the drywall first. When you use cellulose, you can see how it kind of bulges, so you got to go in a little slowly with the drywall screws, just a little bit, because you don't want it to blow through. If you do these screws, if you try to do just one all the way through, it'll blow right through it. So you kind of just have to put a few of them in, and then you can kind of go one at a time, cinch it down. Little by little, we'll get it down there. So once we've screwed it so it's pretty tight, then we can cut out the window opening. If you're going around the outside of something like an electrical box will do, then we're going to go counterclockwise. But if you're going inside, like we're going to be going inside this window, then we'll go clockwise. So you can see I'm kind of slipping around there because it's not tight enough in. I should put one more screw. So I know we have an electrical box right here, so I'm definitely not going to try to get this screw all the way down because it won't be able to go all the way down. Because remember, the electrical boxes stick out and they will end up being flush with the end of the drywall. And then the other electrical box is over here. I'm going to put another screw. I'm going to get them in, but not too tight. You knot it far enough in where the tip of the blade can touch the box, but not so far in that it blows out the drywall. This is called a hawk. Sometimes you'll see people doing drywall with like a trowel. I think this is just a lot easier to hold, and you know, I think it's really easy to use, and I like it. So one thing you want to be really careful about with drywall, especially since I didn't clean this bucket super good, is you don't want any hard stuff in there. So if you find any hard stuff, you want to make sure you get that out of there. You want all smooth, creamy, because the hard stuff will make streaks. You want to load up your hawk with some about like that, and then we'll get our lid here. As long as it's covered, drywall mud will last a long time. So the first thing we'll do is load up the corner with mud, both sides. Just being real messy to start and clean it up after, but when putting it on, I just go pretty messy. You never want to leave like a thin coat like that on your hawk because it'll dry, so we're just going to kind of scoop all that up and make sure it's in a nice set our hawk aside and get some tape. Corners, you want to crease the tape, so we're just going to measure some out here. Crease it, see it comes to the line. Throw it up there. Sure it's pressed into that corner. It's funny, it's called tape, but it's not sticky. Just kind of setting it into the mud, scraping off the excess mud. And then we're just gonna apply a nice bead on top of the tape. Should have a nice, don't want dry tape. Dry tape is gonna cause you problems. And then same thing. It's kind of like wax on, wax off, you know? And not worried about being clean when you're slapping the mud up there. You just want to throw it up there. Kind of hold it down with our hawk. Same thing. Kind of get a little bit, put it on just the center of the knife. Wax on, wax off. So we have two sheets. This is like extra exaggerated, right? But there's a little gap between the sheets, right? And what we're doing is we're laying this tape down, right? And we're putting a thin coat of mud around it. So it's kind of going like this with the mud, right? That's still going to be visible. So we let this harden, and you can see here, this is already hardened. So now I can go through with my knife, my taping knife. You need two surfaces. So you can see if I have a bunch of mud in here, I can go off these two surfaces and it'll fill that with mud as I go down. Can you see that? So what it'll do is I'll use this surface and I'll use my taping knife like that, right? And so it's going to fill in right here. And then I'll wait for that to dry. And then I'll go in with an even longer taping knife and I'll use this surface and this surface. And this taping knife will be like this. Longer taping knife. So now it'll be like this. And that's when it becomes less visible and you won't notice it. So there's many different kinds of corner bead. This is called corner bead here. I really like to use the rounded. It's called bull nose. And I just think it gives a nice soft look rather than the hard corners.
You know I handle this.
Doesn't need to be perfect for this first coat. That's the thing in drywall, like, don't try to make it perfect. You want to come in, just slap it on there, and you know, it'll get more perfect as you go. So screw holes, you can see how I missed the stud here with my screw, so you just want to kind of push that in a little bit. And you want to make sure all the screws are pushed in. You can always run your... You hear that? So that one's a little far out. Just put that in a little bit. Don't hear that clicking sound anymore. See, listen here. That clicking sound, we got to get rid of that. So we're just going to go in. Done. That's it. So a couple things you'll notice here. Number one, taped all the seams, all those areas where we put the insulation in, just trying to get as airtight as possible up there. And then also I did run some drywall up here. Originally I planned on running tongue and groove sealing all the way across. Oops, haven't sealed that one up yet. But I realized that it would be incredibly hard to install the tongue and ceiling once the bathroom ceiling is on, because you know there's very little space up here to work in. So I figured you're never going to see this spot. This is just a storage area. So instead of wasting the tongue and groove, might as well just use some cheaper drywall and install it now while I can still access it from inside this bathroom. Whereas right now that it's installed, I'm going to put the bathroom ceiling in, and it'll be really difficult to get up here and do anything.